Aside from our role reporting on the latest in cleaner, greener, safer and smarter transportation, we're often asked by viewers to debunk stories that they've seen, answer some basic questions related to the same, and give some much needed attention to particular head scratchers that prove that not is all okay in the world of cars with plugs. And this week we have a doozy. An official Renault Australia statement sent recently to all Renault electric car customers in Australia, telling them that portable charging stations are harmful and shouldn't be used. It continued, suggesting that if customers did continue to use their portable charging stations, they could risk damaging their car's battery pack. What's more, the letter suggested that customers who ignore the warning and cause damage to their car's battery pack could find themselves out of warranty as a consequence. At face value, it seems like a completely nonsensical thing to say. After all, if an electric car is sold with a granny lead, the colloquial term for the portable charging unit that allows it to be charged from a domestic power plug, it is super disingenuous to then turn around and tell the customer they can't use it or risk losing their warranty. So, in the interest of trying to explain what's going on and to see just what on earth is causing Renault to do this in the first place, let's deal with the facts as I see them right now. First up, let's look at the mains electricity as presented at a wall outlet in Australia. Unlike some markets where power is 110 or 120 volts, the mains power in Australia is the same as it is in New Zealand, the UK, India and large parts of Europe, 230 volts AC. Unlike a granny lead in the US, which can provide just over 1.3 kilowatts at best, and closer to 1.1 kilowatts at worst, the Australian granny leads, like their counterparts in other 240 volt countries, can pull between 2.7 and 3 kilowatts of power on average. That results in a far faster recharge time from said granny lead. A good example of this? If you charge a car like a 2016 Nissan Leaf from a granny lead in the US, it'll take more than a day to fully charge. Charge that same car from a granny lead in Australia or New Zealand or Europe, and you'll be able to fill it up overnight. But wherever you are in the world, using a granny lead to charge your car does increase the risk of something going wrong. It's not necessarily that there's something bad with the practice per se, but more so that there's a higher risk that the socket you're plugging into won't be able to provide the power that you need it to. When you install a dedicated charging station that's hardwired in, a practice which requires a qualified electrician to actually put the station in, the station itself gets its own breaker, its own dedicated line to the distribution box or fuse box. It's installed using wiring that's purposely overrated for the total power that the circuit is likely to ever pull. This keeps everything totally safe and ensures that there are no problems further down the line. In the case of a wall outlet, it too is likely to be wired with an overhead for safety's sake, but the actual physical socket itself ages and can become corroded. Its pins can become loose, and eventually this leads to poor mechanical and poor electrical connections, which in turn result in a higher current draw on the home's electrical systems to provide the power that your car needs. It's this risk and any fires that could theoretically start as a result of poor electrical connections between the plug and the wall, which causes most automakers around the world to recommend that you have a dedicated charging station installed into your home. The risk, of course, is highest in old homes and in places with high humidity, where excess moisture can accelerate that corrosion process. But that's very different to telling customers they can't use a granny lead because it could damage their car. That's frankly a new one. And it's wrong. There are now plenty of high-quality aftermarket charging stations designed to work with domestic power sockets, and provided the outlet you plug into is properly maintained, rated, and protected with appropriate overcurrent and ground fault protection, you really shouldn't have any issues. But what is the real issue here? Well, I think this is the case of a PR person misinterpreting the rules, or rather, an automaker employee deciding to explain something in simple "don't do this" terms because it's easier than explaining current electrical codes. Here's where it gets interesting. You see, Australia and New Zealand have pretty strict rules when it comes to electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And back in 2018, the rules around what was and wasn't okay, and what is okay when it comes to charging stations, changed. Or rather, the rules used to be quite grey, and now they're not. Prior to 2018, you could plug a granny lead into a 15 amp mains socket and to charge, and it was legal and okay because the wiring regulations were a little janky. But now that's changed with Australia New Zealand wiring rules AS/NZS 3000:2018, which requires any socket used for the charging of a granny lead to be a dedicated 20 amp socket with no other sockets on the same electrical circuit. In other words, it requires you to have a dedicated 20 amp mains socket exclusively for plugging your granny lead in to charge your EV. Dedicated hardwired charging stations all have new rules to follow as well, and this has increased the cost of charging installations, as well as also made the process far safer as they're now over-engineered. And I think that's really what's been going on with Renault and its weird off-the-cuff statement on charging. It's shipping charging stations which I think would probably work with sockets that no longer comply with an updated revised electrical code. And to avoid any legal issues that may or may not result, I think it's probably just decided to strongly discourage customers from using them. Or rather, it's told customers they can't use them. Of course, the smarter thing here would be to explain said differences. It's a little like towing with your EV, because most car companies don't condone it, but I can tell you it's totally possible. It may not technically be legal in your country, but it's possible. It's best for a company to err on the side of caution though, and that's what they've done. Look, I'm not condoning Renault's behaviour here. The message is very short-sighted and frankly does nothing to instill customer confidence. I really hope that Renault sorts this issue out very soon. Will your car be damaged? Well, I think it'll be fine, but don't come after me if you have a problem. That's it. Thanks for watching. Please do like, comment and subscribe. That's it. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.